Again, my name is Malva Daniel Reed. I welcome you to our first webinar. It's our Lunch and Learn series. I am going to turn it over to Dr. Victor McCrary, who is our VP of Research of the Office of Research at the University Research, and he's also the Vice Chair of the National Science Board. Dr. McCrary, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Dr. Reed, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our kickoff for our 2024-2025 Lunch and Learn webinar, which is a product of the Office of the Chief Academic Officer here in the Office of University Research at the University of the District of Columbia. And to remind everybody, we are the District of Columbia's only public HBCU and land-grant institution. So I want to welcome all of my faculty colleagues, as well as our guests from some of our HBCUs, which are part of the HBCU S&T Council. It is my pleasure to welcome Dr. Claudia Rankins, who is a Senior Research Associate for Prism Academic Services, LLC, where she conducts faculty development and research development consulting activities specifically towards faculty at historically Black colleges and universities and pursuing National Science Foundation funding in STEM and STED education. Dr. Rankins has retired from the National Science Foundation, where she served as a program director in the Directorate for Education and Human Resources, which is now called the STEM Ed Directorate. She directed the HBCU undergraduate program and the HBCU Excellence in Research program, and she was served at Hampton University for 22 years in a number of capacities, including endowed university professor, chair of the Department of Physics, assistant dean for research, and dean of the School of Science. She is also a proud HBCU graduate, having obtained her master's and PhD degrees in physics from Hampton University. Dr. Rankins is an advocate for STEM education and research at HBCUs. Her current research interests center around the history of STEM at these institutions. Her research in theoretical particle physics focused on the development of a model to describe distribution amplitudes and form factors of pseudoscalar mesons. Dr. Rankin is a co-founder of the Society of the Study of Women of Color. I have also known Dr. Rankins personally for well over a decade. She was also awarded and honored by the Black Engineer Year Awards for her contributions to helping our HBCUs and particularly our faculty and students, but also in terms of building research capacity. So without further ado, it is my sincere pleasure to introduce Dr. Claudia Rankins, who will kick off our Lunch and Learn series for this academic year, talking about grant writing and what you need to write a successful grant proposal. Dr. Rankins.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. And thank you, Victor, for saying all of that. This just makes me sound like I'm really old and been around for a while, but I appreciate it. I want to just say that I am so happy to see so many of you. I see some friends, I see colleagues, people I know. I want to give a special welcome to anybody on this call who is new faculty at UDC, and I saw there were some other institutions present as well. So I have a number of slides for you. I may not get to all of them because I want to really leave some time at the end to answer your questions. So the slides will be made available to you, as Dr. Reed said. So if I go a little fast or skip some things, you're not missing anything. Let me go ahead and share my slides now. And let's jump right in what we're going to do today. So I hope you can see everything okay.
Can anybody whose phone is not on mute, please put them on mute? Dr. McCrary, I don't know if that's you. Thanks.
No, it's not, but thank you.
So I hope you can see okay. I just want to start out by telling you a few things about Prism Academic Services, because we do have a contract with UDC and we are available to support you with your grant development, research development needs. And you can see the team. My son, Dr. Falcon Rankins, who founded the company in 2007, myself and Dr. Coran Bedeau. We will have one of your colleagues come on a little bit later, and she'll tell you just for about 2 or 3 minutes what it's like to work with us. So if any of you at the end decide you want to pursue a grant and you do need a little bit of support, know that we are available to you. So why are we here today? We want to talk a little bit about the first steps to consider when you write a proposal, be it to the National Science Foundation or elsewhere. Familiarize yourself briefly with the NSF merit review criteria. Don't know if we'll get to the funding opportunities, but if we do, list some highlights of NSF funding opportunities. And then you hear from one of your colleagues for a few minutes, and I want to leave time for you to answer questions. So I start out with one of my favorite quotes. Before you start thinking about doing research, writing grants, ask yourself, do you understand, cultivate, and guard the most impactful and unique aspects of your work as a scholar? Ask yourself, what is it you want to do? What unique thing do you offer? Don't worry so much about what everybody around you wants you to do. Because for you to thrive as faculty, you need to do what it is that's closest to your heart. So this was a quote by Dr. Veranda Montgomery. And so when you think about first steps, think about that. What is it you want to do? Do you want to do research, disciplinary research, education research? Do you want support for your students? Do you want to change your curriculum, have more teaching support, teach differently, better? Do you want to be involved in an institutional transformation effort? Do you want to be the sole PI and sort of establish yourself, your lab? Do you want to work with a team or maybe even collaborate with other institutions? Ask yourself what you need to reach these goals, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. And then design the grant around you and what you need, what you want, your research questions. And remember, the goal is to advance your research. So the grant is a tool. Your end goal is not to get the grant. That's just the start of what you're going to do once you get the grant. Now, some next steps. After that, you want to find the funding opportunity that supports the research. You want to familiarize yourself with the funding agency's announcements, any deadlines that are coming up. If you are applying to the National Science Foundation, there is that document called the Proposal and Award Policies and Procedures Guide that changes every year that you should read. Initially, you only need to read part one of it, how to prepare your proposal. You may want to talk to a program officer once you identify where you're submitting your proposal to. And you definitely want to see what was previously funded by that agency, by that program, by that organization, so that you sort of get an idea of how what you are planning to do fits in. Now, here are some steps at UDC you need to follow before you even start. It's in red because those are UDC colors. Okay, review UDC's handbook. And again, if you have any questions about the red slides, Dr. McCreary is the perfect person to ask. And I see that Ms. Cynthia Muhammad is also on this call, who can answer questions about that, either now or later. You don't have to ask all of your questions about this now. So you want to complete your biosketch and contact Ms. Cynthia Muhammad in the Office of University Research. You want to make a quad chart of your research idea. And again, Dr. McCrary has some details on that, but that's sort of basically where you're asking yourself the questions I just told you to ask, and also ask yourself where you see yourself at the end of this process. There is something called Pivot that you can sign up for to get grant opportunities that are relevant to your interests. Also, every funding agency has some sort of link that you can sign up for to get any announcements you need. If you're not a US citizen, make sure before you pursue any funding opportunity, and these things differ by agencies, make sure you check PI eligibility regarding citizenship requirements. Some agencies have more stringent requirements than others. There are also some new congressionally mandated certifications that the university has to make for each person applying for federal funding, such as the Malign Foreign Talent Recruitment Program. That sounds really ominous. It's really not as bad as it sounds, but each agency is asking your university to certify certain things about you. And before you start writing a proposal, you should know what those certifications are to make sure you're even qualified to submit a proposal to that agency. You always want to engage your chair. Dr. McCrary, did you have a question or anyone?
Oh, no, I'm okay.
Okay. Also, engage your chair, maybe even your dean, and the UDC Office of University Research to obtain permission to submit your proposal, because sometimes agencies have limited numbers of submissions. You may want to suggest something. Let's say you want to suggest like new courses in the curriculum in your department. You definitely need to engage your chair and maybe even your dean to see if that's even something that is wanted in your department. So until you talk to your chair, dean, the UDC Office of Research about what you're going to submit and what funding opportunity you're pursuing, don't make any promises to anyone like potential partners. And putting in a plug for UDC Research Week 2025, I think it's typically in April. Maybe I'll even get an invitation to come this year because I'd love to see what you're doing and what's going on. So now you have this idea, right? Because that was step one. Now you need to align your idea and your goals to the funders. So the National Science Foundation and the National Institutes of Health are usually interested in your best ideas within what they fund, of course. So not just your best ideas. NSF funds all types of research, including social science and behavioral science research. NIH is more on the medical side, but they don't typically prescribe what you should, what your proposal should look like. They are interested in your best ideas. Whereas mission agencies like NASA, DOE, and just about all of the federal agencies that award grants seek proposals that align with the specific mission. So they will let you know in what area. If I'm the US Department of Transportation, I want my proposals to be focused on transportation, for example. If I'm the Department of Energy or the Department of Education, I will let you know what areas we are focused on. If you're going after philanthropic organizations, then make sure that their ideas are usually shaped by their boards and they have very specific things they fund, and that's it. Not maybe your best idea, but they want you to write to their best ideas. If your idea aligns with no funding agency whatsoever, then I have sort of bad news for you. Funding agencies don't change their missions and their ideas and what they're funding to suit what you want to do, you sort of have to make sure that what you want to do aligns with the funding agency that's best suited. So that may take a little bit of time, and that may take some help. Sponsored research may be able to help. You may have an Office of Institutional Advancement that can help, but particularly in the area of philanthropy. All right. So remember what I said about the grant being the tool. The grant can enable you to advance knowledge. You can, for example, in NSF grants, buy more time by asking for course buyouts, by outsourcing some services like computer services, by maybe, if it's a large grant, getting part-time administrative support, by getting stipends for student assistance. You can also, in most grants, ask to attend conferences and workshops. You can take the current project to work on ideas to set up the next project. Some grants lend themselves to writing in professional development opportunities and training. So grants don't just allow you to do your research, but they also allow you to do your research in a more efficient way. So after you considered all of that, now you can start writing the proposal, because you know your funding opportunity now, where to go to. You talk to your sponsored research office, you talk to your dean, everything's good to go, you're qualified as a PI. All right, you're ready to write. So my remaining 10 or 15 minutes that I'm going to talk, I want to talk about NSF. And I want to start out with, well, first of all, what NSF is interested in. So like I said, they're generally interested in your ideas. They fund research across all non-medical fields of science and engineering, as well as STEM education. Research that fits well within established programs in the directorates and offices. Occasionally, Congress tells NSF that there are areas of urgent need for the national well-being. And then there are lots of opportunities at NSF in those areas. I just want to show you one: artificial intelligence. If you just go to the NSF website and go to the site that says artificial intelligence, and I'm going to stroll through that quickly, gives you lots of information, but sort of towards the bottom, it tells you featured funding opportunities. And if you click on that, it takes you to the program that funds these opportunities. So core program, small business, cyber physical systems, ethical and responsible research, engineering related research, design of technologies, all areas of artificial intelligence that you can think of. So you can see how cross-cutting that can be, from engineering to computer science, but also involving like the social sciences in areas like ethics and responsibility and so forth. If you're interested in that, or quantum information science and engineering, which is another hot topic, there are all sorts of opportunities available. If anybody wants to talk about those further, we can have a conversation at one point. We can have maybe a webinar that focuses more on that. Just let me know. NSF is also interested in projects with intellectual merit and broader impacts. And so when I talk about these merit review principles, and you're saying, well, that's NSF specific, I'm going to apply to NASA, or I'm going to apply to USDA, remember the concept behind the principles applies to every proposal that you write. NSF just has names for it. All NSF projects must be of the highest quality and have potential to advance knowledge. That's all funded projects everywhere. but NSF in particular calls that the intellectual merit and asks you to address it in those terms. If you write a proposal to NASA, it must be of the highest quality and have the potential to advance knowledge. Contribute to societal goals. Everything that's federally funded should contribute to societal goals. NSF calls that broader impacts. And the third principle that we don't often hear about as much, we hear intellectual merit and broader impacts, but the third one that's as important and is a review principle at NSF and a review principle just about everywhere is that your project must be assessed and evaluated on appropriate metrics. So evaluation and assessment, that takes on different forms. So I'm not going to talk for the sake of time about intellectual merit and broader impacts more, but I want to show you what else is important to NSF, which again applies to every proposal you write to any funding agencies. NSF judges you on the extent to which your proposed activities are creative, original, and they must at least be creative and original, but maybe even transformative. Not everything we do is always transformative, but it must be creative and it must be original. We always have to show whatever we say we're going to do. We have these goals and objectives and our research questions. We must show in detail for how we're going to do what we say we're going to do. So a well-reasoned and well-organized plan. And also a plan or mechanism to assess that success. Some of the bigger proposals, like typically center proposals, institutional transformation proposals, and such require that last piece you outsource to a professional and well-trained evaluator. You always have to show how well qualified you are, your team, your organization, and that you have adequate resources available at your institution to carry out those activities. So those are sort of the review criteria, the additional criteria that NSF has that serve you well to think about when you write a proposal, whether it's to NSF or not. So I'll take about 10 minutes to sort of run through these funding opportunities. NSF has about 300 programs to which you can apply. Anybody can apply to those. Give me just a second. So 2 programs in particular, sorry about that, I got a little bit distracted. 2 programs in particular are for HBCU faculty only. So out of the 300, that everyone can apply to, including you. There's the HBCU Up and the HBCU Excellence in Research programs that are solely for PIs at HBCUs. NSF in general has programs also that cut across disciplines and directorates. A few areas, particularly in the social sciences, have dissertation and postdoctoral programs. Also, the Directorate of Mathematical and Physical Sciences has postdoctoral programs. So not every directorate has, but some of them do. And there is the Graduate Research Fellowship Program, which provides direct support to graduate students. And students can apply to that program as senior undergraduate students. So that is an excellent fellowship to apply to. HBCU students don't get nearly enough of those graduate research fellowships. So if you know any students in STEM who are going to go to graduate school next year, tell them to apply for the graduate research fellowship. In addition to sort of regular full research proposal, NSF provides funding for workshops and conferences, if you're interested in doing that. Equipment proposals, Dr. McCrary. The HBCU UP program gave out 4 equipment proposals. 2 went to FAMU. 1 was for $1.5 million. So this is not the major research instrumentation program, but you can write to the HBCU UP program if you need equipment for your research and or your students to do research. So take advantage of that. The details of what's on this slide are in the PAPPG. Read up on planning grants, for example. Maybe you don't quite know what you want to study yet or do yet, and you need a planning grant. Maybe you have an existing grant and you need a supplement. And then there are eager and rapid proposals. And rapid proposals are for example, faculty at Morgan State got one after the Key Bridge collapsed when the ship hit the bridge. They needed some quick money to do a quick study. You write a 6-page rapid proposal on what you want to do to react to some disaster or something that comes up. And so these are some of the funding opportunities that we often don't see about. So real quick, and I'm running through these quickly, but you will get the slides. Make yourself familiar with the HBCU UP program. It was designed for HBCU faculty to get the support they need in research, in education research, to teach better, institutional transformation. They have big centers for broadening participation research. HBCU excellence in research. I think I saw on the call Dr. Nian Zhang, who is a recent awardee of about $700,000 or so Excellence in Research Award. Congratulations to her. There are others at UDC who have that award, and there's some who are applying this year. There are funding opportunities for students, for teaching, the IU's program, the STEM scholarship, research experiences for undergraduates. There are 2 specific opportunities. If you're mid-career faculty, like associate professor, and you haven't done research in a while, and you want to get back into NSF, there's mid-career advancement. And for those of you who are new, I hope at one point we get to talk about you submitting a career proposal, which is for assistant professors who have not achieved the status, who are still untenured. And that's NSF's most prestigious award for early career faculty. There are 2 programs focusing on STEM education research. So promise you I'm almost done, but I want to really quickly go through my slides. If it were me, this is what I would do. And I want to tout my own horn, but pretty much every proposal I wrote got funded because I did most of the things I'm telling you to maybe do. Use a targeted approach to which proposals you submit. Don't just submit a proposal for the sake of doing it. Always follow all the guidelines, address the review criteria. When you write your proposal, be consistent in style, make it easy to read. Like if you look at your proposal and you say, I don't want to read this because it's like too dense, there's too much information in here, I can't see where everything is, reviewers will think the same. Before you write the proposal, have a checklist of all of the components. They usually listed in the solicitation. Cite the latest sources and do a thorough literature search. I think I saw somebody who's a librarian signed up for this talk. I don't know if they're here today, but I want to give a shout out to librarians. Take advantage of your librarians when you do your lit search. Use a citation manager. I think I said that before, look at other projects that have been funded by the program to which you're submitting. Choose your collaborators wisely. I could give a whole talk about that and things that went sour because you hooked up with the wrong people. You are linked to your collaborators, not only in doing research, but budget-wise and writing your report and all of those other things. Make sure your budget reflects the work proposed. Get somebody who will actually do it, to give you feedback and proofread. Give yourself plenty of time when you've written everything to upload all documents and submit in advance of the deadline. I think sponsored research will echo that when I say you should not submit a proposal on the day it's due, and particularly not submit it at 4 p.m. when the deadline is 5 p.m. because your sponsored research office has to do a little something before they push the button after you submit it. So I'm sure UDC has sort of a deadline by which you have to submit prior to the deadline the funding agency has. And last but not least, don't give up if your proposal doesn't get funded. Only about 12% of first-time proposals at NSF get funded. Of course, you want to be one of the 12%, and you likely will, but if you're not, consider the feedback reviewers give you and the program officers give you, revise and resubmit. Don't have just wasted a lot of time writing a proposal, it didn't get funded, and you give up. All right, lastly, you can see what we do on our website, prism.com. You can write to us for general information. You can write to me in particular at crankins@prism.com if there's not enough time today to answer all of your questions. I hope you do have some questions. I'm going to unshare. I saw that your colleague who is going to address you for a minute has joined, but I'll just give you a second so you can write down the email address. And now I'm going to stop sharing. So I know I went a little bit quick through everything because I did want to have time to interact with you. You can answer your questions in the chat. You can raise your hand, however you prefer. But first, and Afia, are you here? I saw her in the waiting room. Yes, she is. So first, let me introduce to you just real briefly one of your colleagues, Dr. Afia Fredericks, Associate Professor of Psychology. And I asked her to speak for just a few minutes to you about PRISM, working with her working with PRISM. Dr. Fredericks, in case you don't know, has a career award, and I mentioned before, one of the most prestigious NSF awards and one of the largest career awards ever awarded, not to UDC, not to an HBCU, but one of the largest ever. So Afia, I'll turn the mic over to you.
Yes, thank you for that awesome introduction, Claudia. So I was happy that Claudia asked me to speak because I've had a real amazing experience with PRISM, working with Claudia and Falcon. When I first started working with PRISM, I was really wanting to apply for the career award, but I was honestly contemplating waiting a year, right? Because of course, all the fear sets in, I'm not ready, I don't know. And I remember at the time, I just had a lot of great ideas and I didn't quite have a 15-pager yet. And I remember I met with Claudia and she said, listen, write the 15 pages and get it to me in 2 weeks. And so after the conversation, I got to work. I gave her 17 pages, and Falcon and Claudia, they went through my project description. We met. They were able to give me insight on how I could strengthen the proposal, what aspects I could take out, because obviously it was too long. They really were able to support me as I developed that proposal and then submitted the proposal. So I don't know that I would have submitted, honestly, if I wasn't working with PRISM because I was doubting myself a lot. But Claudia encouraged me and Falcon. And even when it came to the budget, there were things that I just wasn't aware of. I just didn't understand per se. But Claudia had that expertise where she was able to guide me in terms of what things I might want to consider. So it was really helpful. And so even then, after submitting the grant, it was super helpful because I got questions from my program officer, right? And so I had to address the questions. And so I wasn't necessarily aware of this process and, how to navigate that. But with the expertise of PRISM, they had awareness of, what I may want to consider and potential ways I could respond. And one of the questions that the program officer posed was, do you have an external examiner? Because if you don't, the reviewers were recommending that I do, right? And so gratefully, PRISM is now a reviewer, external examiner on my project. And so they continue to support me throughout the process. And so post award, they are able to support me with things like, as I'm considering supplemental awards, what's the next grant kind of funding source, etc. I'm able to have these discussions and receive guidance on the appropriate mechanisms depending on the type of ideas that I have and what I want to do. And so it's been extremely beneficial. So I'm grateful for UDC, the Office of Sponsored Programs and Office of Research for engaging and working with PRISM, because it's really, like Claudia talks about the 1.6 mil, but I don't know if there wasn't a PRISM, if there would be this award, right? And so I'm eternally grateful for PRISM and their support in my process. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much. And I wanted you to hear from Afia because we have a contract, as I mentioned, with UDC. So if you want us to sort of guide you through the grant writing process, just let Dr. McCrary know or let Ms. Mohammed know, and they'll connect you. We're working with a number of faculty submitting excellence in research proposals. We're working with somebody doing a targeted infusion proposal. So we're happy to work with UDC faculty.
Well, Claudia.
So thanks, Afia, and I'm so glad that it all worked out.
Well,
because sometimes, yes, and so Kevin asked a good question. What might be some of the other reasons why grants are funded? Like if only 12% of first-time grants get funded, they weren't necessarily any better than the other 88%, right? Because pretty much everyone put their heart and soul in their proposal. So what distinguishes those that get funded from others? And one thing I think is sort of, you just heard Afia talk, when you sort of put your heart and soul into your proposal and you talk a little bit at reviewers' heartstrings, I think it gives you an edge. Let me just give you an example. And you can't do that in every proposal. But when I was a program officer running a panel, they were for implementation projects, which are sort of institutional transformation projects, multi-million dollar project. One came from Mississippi Valley State, and they were working with math teachers in the Mississippi Delta to teach better. The way they described their students in such caring terms, they had two panelists in tears when they started reading the introduction. And even though this wasn't the best proposal I ever read, it did get funded because they made the case for why it was necessary for the funding to go to Mississippi Valley State for that project. So we can always, that's just sort of a little bit of an extreme example, but follow all instructions, do everything that you're being asked to do, but then do put a little bit of your personality, not throughout the proposal, at one point. Even when you talk about UDC, because in most proposals, they don't need to hear really so much that UDC is the way it's described, but how do you perceive it? Like talk about your students a little bit that are in your classroom that you're going to work with. So again, I'm waiting for more questions. And
Well, Claudia, while you're waiting for questions, I want to first say, everybody, let's give a round of applause to Dr. Rankins for a great seminar. And Dr. Fredericks, we appreciate the shout out to the Office of University Research and navigating. She is one of our superstars. And as you heard from Dr. Rankins, one of the biggest, not just HBCU, NSF Career Awards. I should also point out that you all, UDC, also has a distinction of being the first HBCU to have an Allen T. Waterman Award winner. Okay. So, and that was the first time in 46 years, and have had a number of proposals that Dr. Rankins has assisted faculty in, which we have just been awarded. So this is a good time to ask questions. I see one coming up, but let me make one remark to you all. It's not that good ideas are funded, but good proposals. And so I hope one of the things you heard from Dr. Rankins today is making sure, for example, you're capturing the words that are in the solicitation. Make sure you are personable in it. Make sure, as I used to have all colleagues say, that your grandmother could read this proposal and understand it to the degree. Sometimes there is a tendency on our part as scientists, engineers, social scientists to get lost in a lot of technical jargon. No, you've got 15 pages to really sell an idea. And so that is what is really important. Remember, good ideas don't get funded. Good proposals do. Claudia, we have a question here. Could you say a little bit about capacity building funding for UDC?
Before we move on, can I say something?
yes,
That was on the subject of what the question we're leaving. Just wanted to alert people that sometimes a very good proposal didn't get funded because the money simply isn't in the budget.
Right.
Each
yes,
director has so many millions of dollars, and they have to turn down really good proposals because they only have money to fund so many. So if you don't get funded, don't get discouraged. It doesn't mean that your application wasn't superb. It was that they didn't have the money to fund it.
And that is the voice of Cynthia Muhammad in the Office of University Research, which you all work with. She is very, very correct. And one of the things that Claudia said in her presentation is you should, once you get a notice that say you're not funded, don't go into long-term depression. A lot of people are not funded who have very good proposals. And it may not be because your proposal wasn't good. It's just as Ms. Muhammad said, the funding line was cut off. But what you need to do is ask for a debrief. Okay?
yes.
It helps you to ask for a debrief, because if you don't ask, you don't know. And then what will happen is mostly program officers, particularly in NSF, will encourage you to resubmit for the next funding cycle or solicitation that comes out. So when you have that, first of all, everybody gets good news. I always hear when everybody wins an award. If you don't get an award, no one ever hears anything. So please contact the Office of University Research. Say, I was turned down. Help me on my next steps. And that's what we're here to help you with.
I often hear the word, I got a rejection. You did not get a rejection. Your research was not rejected. Your idea was not rejected. There was just not enough money to fund it. And I see my friend Kavita Mitapali on this call who says, if we don't apply, we would 100% not get funded. And that is so true. So I mentioned capacity building, and somebody asked about that. And there are a number of programs at NSF that look at capacity building in various ways. So one NSF project that UDC has had for years is the HBC Up implementation, which builds capacity in STEM education. And there can only be one at the institution, so you're not eligible now, but you will be again in a few years. NSF funds a number of centers that HBCUs have rather been successful in getting that focus on capacity building and research. There is one in particular in the HBCU Up program that focuses on capacity in broadening participation research, so education research. There are capacity building programs. One is called AGAP, that is concerned with faculty development. Not sure if you've ever looked at the advanced program that seeks institutional capacity and transformation to achieve gender equality. And then there are programs like the major research instrumentation that allow you, now you do have to write a 15-page proposal around it, but that allow you to ask for a piece of equipment. And those equipment proposals, I mentioned that you can submit to HBCU Up. So we could do a whole sort of talk about capacity building, but there are at NSF a number of programs that foster building capacity. Each directorate now has sort of mimicked the HBCU Up program, which has a track called Research Initiation Awards to build capacity among early career faculty, as well as faculty who haven't had any funding in a while. And each directorate now has like a similar track. In the Math and Physical Science Directorate, they call the program LEAPS. In engineering, they call it Research Initiation Grants. So there are these grants that are available, these opportunities for either early career faculty or faculty who haven't been funded, federally funded in a while. There are editors available to review proposals by single authors. So, Kelly Hill, if you want to take advantage of PRISM, yes, we function as editors. We do review your proposal. It takes a little bit more time than just like a couple of weeks. So you would have to have your proposal in readable form, I would say 4 to 6 weeks prior to submission. And also, if it's not to the National Science Foundation, we would need a little bit more time or a heads up to make sure we can find somebody. You know, we have a network of people who read proposals that we find the right fit for you.
Dr. Rankins, there was a question about capacity building, which you talked about, and that came from our Associate Dean of the School of Business and Public Administration, Dr. Chinta. Thank you for that question. The reason I'm calling him out is because NSF also has a directorate on social behavior and economics, SBE. And so they will fund proposals. A lot of people think National Science Foundation, they think, quote, science, but they will fund proposals in social science. They will even have funded law schools talking about policy as it affects, for example, science and science policy. And by the way, we should point out that at least a couple of our principal investigators in the School of Business have been funded by NSF for work that they're doing in artificial intelligence. So don't think that you have to be a hardcore physical scientist or an engineer, and that's the only thing that NSF funds. So the SBE Directorate also is available. You should look at their website, engage the program officers, things that are dealing in behavior, particularly, for example, what are the impacts of artificial intelligence on underserved communities, is something that they're looking at and would welcome a proposal.
Dr. Reed, if there's ever interest in me giving a talk just to education, social science faculty, behavioral science faculty on NSF funding opportunities, I would be more than happy to, because I'm not ruling anybody else out, but typically the engineers and the, you know, mathematicians and chemists know where to pursue funding. But for those faculty who might not, you know, think that there's a home for them at the National Science Foundation, they might be surprised. NSF funds linguistics, anthropology, all sorts of fields in that area.
Thank you, Dr. Rankin. We will definitely make sure we take you up on that and send out an invitation to our College of Arts and Sciences and causes. I think those are the two ones that would benefit good well from that.
So if there's interest, just let me know. Be happy to. And so the answer the answer to the question how to contact Miss Mohammed has been answered. There's her email address. Yeah, so there's a question, are there grants to fund development of a master's degree program at an HBCU? Actually, sort of the one gap of funding at NSF is at the master's level. The HBCU Up program provides funding for undergraduate degrees. There's a program called CREST Centers, where if you're interested in PhD programs, there is a track for you to do that, but there really isn't anything specific for starting a master's program itself. It could be part of another bigger program, could be a smaller part, but in itself, there's no program where you could just send a proposal to and say, I want to start a master's program in chemistry. And that's it. So we could talk if you're interested, Dr. Raj, and see what else you're interested in doing and how we can maybe fit that in to something else. All right, now there are lots of questions. Okay, Dr. Washington, Talitha Washington, I'm so happy to see you on this call. Here is somebody who knows all about how to get lots of money from NSF. But she has this Includes Alliance, and she says she's super happy to support NSF HBCU Up projects. Connect with Dr. Washington. Her area is like big data, data analysis, all of that. She also has experience working at NSF for a while. Former Howard professor in mathematics. So if you are at all interested in that area, please look at her website, the ndsalliance.org, and contact her. Talitha, we have like 1 second.
Thank you, Claudia. Yeah, so just I'm so inspired. Every time I listen to you, I learn something new. So I'm really inspired right now. And yeah, so the HBCU Up proposal solicitation actually says it encourages partnership with NSF, includes alliances. And so if our alliance can support in any way, our main functionalities are workshops, curriculum development, work groups, info sessions, listening sessions, engagement across HBCUs, anything data related. If any of that could be helpful, pending approval of my amazing co-PIT, we'd be happy to support, provide letters of collaboration, and just help in any way that we can.
That is really good to know. Thank you. Thank you.
Dr. Washington, where are you from?
I am originally from Evansville, Indiana. Or where am I now?
Yeah, where are you now?
Okay. I'm a Hoosier. I am in Atlanta, Georgia. I am a professor of mathematics at Clark Atlanta University, and I'm also the director of the Atlanta University Center Data Science Initiative. And I see some of our colleagues on the call who's participated in some of the NSF, National Data Science Alliance activities. We do have, shameless plug, we have curriculum development work groups. I know somebody said they were thinking about developing master's programs. If it's data related, check out the website, check out our curriculum development work groups. It's still open. And so we support the building of curriculum. But we're in the Atlanta where, we have the state with the best roll call, Georgia.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. Well, we're almost at the end, but Dr. McCrary wanted me to mention, and this is an important topic, become a reviewer at the funding agency to which you're applying. Namely, if you want to be a reviewer at NSF, if you don't know how to go about doing it, the Office of Sponsored Research is happy to help you. But if you've never reviewed at NSF, go to the NSF website, find the HBCU Up program, contact the lead program officer, Dr. Khalida Page Anderson, and tell her you want to be a reviewer. I'm not discouraging you from reviewing in the research directorates, but that's sort of a good place to get started. I cannot overemphasize how much you learn when you are on a review panel. I'll share my personal story right quick. The first proposal I wrote was for an REU, Research Experiences for Undergraduates project. And I wrote it exactly like my advisor always did, except he was seasoned and NSF knew him and he could get funded just by saying, here I am. I was an professor. So the panel was like, that's a lousy proposal. But the program officer invited me to the panel. First of all, he gave me 1 year of funding. Then he invited me to the panel. And I was sitting there saying, I'm so embarrassed now that I sent that proposal in the way it went in. I really learned how to do it right. So Talitha also said review for the Graduate Research Fellowship Program. That's excellent. Maybe we'll get, if we have more HBCU reviewers, maybe we'll get more grants funded to HBCUs. Who knows? And yes, this is the very last reminder then, Dr. McCrary, and then our time is up. So remember to contact me if you have further questions. The vice chair of the National Science Board, that's the boss of the NSF director. The vice chair is your own, Dr. McCrary, the only HBCU on board. He knows all about NSF. Ask him questions. You have people on this call. I'm so glad Dr. Washington and people from her center are on that call. I saw some people from Alabama State on the call. So I guess the point is find somebody to ask your questions of. This is not something you need to do by yourself. Writing your first grant proposal or your 10th grant proposal is a daunting process. Ask for support, ask for help. We are here for you. McCrary is here for you. Ms. Muhammad is here for you. Your chair and dean are here for you. And so many people out in the community are rooting for you. So I hope to hear from you. Happy proposal writing or happy forming your idea to do something. I'm channeling Michelle Obama now. Do something. Okay.
And
all right,
Dr.
thank you
Rankin,
so
thank
much.
you. So let's give
Thank
her
you
a round
very
of
much.
applause. Thank you, Dr. Rankin. And I want to say for those who are visiting from other schools, please feel free to tune in to our Lunch and Learns. We will be sending out the schedule. We have some really great topics, but again, I want to hear from you to actually mreid, R-E-I-D, at udc.edu.